Ray, thank you. So, workers should be given limited pay rises this year in order to protect pensioners from inflation. That, according to Tory MP Sir Peter Bottomley. The father of the House's intervention came amid warnings of a looming cost of living crisis. Sir Peter's called for restraint in increases to prevent a plunge in pensioners' purchasing power. Well, it's certainly an interesting idea being put forward by a 77-year-old MP, but how will it go down with the younger generation? I'm delighted to be joined now by journalist and political commentator Georgia Gilholy, who joins me now and is certainly considerably younger than 77. Good to see you there, Georgia, and a very happy new year to you. Let's start with the position that older folk find themselves in at the beginning of this year. The abandonment of the triple lock gives pensioners a pretty tough start to the year already, plus the inflation that we all face.
Yeah, of course. Let's not forget there are many vulnerable people on pensions, which obviously is a fixed income, and they are certainly bearing the brunt of inflation, as we all are, really. However, the vast majority of pensioners have, given that they're older, they've managed to accumulate assets over their lifetime. They may have a property or multiple properties, and probably, they would have bought them when it was a lot cheaper to do so. So I think that, we always need to think of the most vulnerable when we're thinking of, our economic policy. But first of all, people who are, supporting families, they're often also supporting older people in their families who are pensioners. And also they need to support themselves and think about their own futures too. And I think that, really as well, he's referring to, pay rises, which are the business of businesses, really, and not the business of, the Treasury or MPs. So I think that, really it's not any of his business anyway. And I think it's pretty interesting that this comment comes from Sir Peter after earlier this year. He actually said that, the MP salary of about £80,000 a year was grim to live on. I think that he clearly seems to be one of those backbenchers who knows that he's never going to be in cabinet again, so he can say these kind of outrageous things. And, sometimes that's useful, sometimes it's not. I think in this case, it's really not useful. I think it's a bad attitude to have towards younger people or, even middle-aged people who are just trying to sort of think about their future, think about having their own children.
Georgia, I didn't want to interrupt because I wanted you to be able to set out your thesis, as it were, which you did very eloquently there. But right at the beginning, you said pensioners have built up assets, they've got things to fall back upon. Yeah, rich ones have, middle-class ones have, but the vast majority of pensioners are from fairly low-key groups because that's the demographic of the country. They have nothing to fall back upon other than the state pension.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And also there are many people who, have worked their entire lives and then find themselves sort of unable to pay care costs, that kind of thing. So like I'm saying, it's definitely an issue. But the problem is here as well, inflation isn't being caused in the UK by wage rises. It's being caused by, a range of compounded factors over the past year or so. And even longer, it's been caused by we've had a surge in prices, especially in hospitality, after the government was subsidising hospitality last year and slashing their prices. We have, a natural gas shortage across Europe. We have supply chain issues, which are sort of a combination of COVID lockdowns and also bits and pieces to do with the handling of Brexit. So this isn't something that is caused by, young people like me just living on six-figure salaries. It's about these range of domestic and global issues and sort of, telling businesses to not raise people's wages when let's say they want to do so or they don't want to do so. Depends on the business, I guess, how well they're doing. That's not going to solve these issues. These issues are here to stay and they need to be handled with properly and maturely, which, they're not being dealt with in that way right now because this is sort of a result of government mismanagement.
Totally accept international pressures, and there's no better example of that than energy prices and oil and liquid petroleum gas. But let move it on a little bit, if I may, to the other side of the argument, as it were, and that is workers saying we want higher wages. Without productivity, would you accept that will further boost inflation, which we both agreed at the beginning of the conversation, it's everybody, you, me, pensioners, the whole caboose?
No, I agree. I think that obviously inflation rising and wages not following them is an issue because it means that there's going to be a cost of living crisis. However, you can't just say, oh, okay, let's force businesses to rise wages. That's all I'm saying. It's not how it works. You need to have productivity behind that. You need to have a solid sort of economic system behind that. And that is not what's happening because we have these issues that are not being dealt with. Energy, as you say, is an absolutely perfect issue of that. The UK is importing sort of over half of its natural gas, which it doesn't need to do because, one, it has its own gas, and two, we have other ways of making power. And these are things that, like I'm saying, they're sort of here for the long term, and these short term, debacles are not going to deal with it.
Sure. The other part of the equation, and it's a tremendously important part, because, I mean, what we're talking about is political and economic, but it's also the basic rules of economics as well, supply and demand. There is a really severe shortage of labour at the moment in the market. So if you have a skill and you go into the marketplace, you say, yeah, I'll do that job for you, but my price is going to be X. There isn't somebody automatically that the employer can go to, so you probably will get X.
Yeah, I mean, that's just sort of how economic works. I mean, it doesn't really matter sort of what your political persuasion is. I think those are sort of the hard and fast rules. That's how it works. And I think that it makes sense if there's a reduction in supply. Of course, people are going to expect higher wages, especially after, they've been subsidised to sit at home, basically, a lot of these people for a while during the pandemic, whether they wanted to or not. Many of them, of course, didn't want to. So it makes sense that this is something that's happening. But like I'm saying, this is not the reason why we're having economic issues. It's not because people are sort of wandering around, demanding six-figure salaries. And also, if you look at it, let's say an HGV driver's getting £50,000 a year, which seems like a lot for what people would frame as a low-skill job. It obviously is skilled in many ways. That's not, it's not a billionaire salary. It's not something that's going to tip things in a certain negative way. Like I'm saying, also, this is the result of, the long-term issue that is caused by the lockdowns. And also, of course, when it comes to labour demand, it's also related to Brexit, because obviously, if there's less supply globally of people who would like to, say, take up certain jobs in the UK, sure. Obviously, the smaller amount of people who are left to do those jobs will need a high wage or demand a high wage.
Georgia, let me squeeze one last one in, and we've literally got less than a minute to go. There are many Tory MPs who've written, former ministers as well, have written to the Telegraph this morning saying on energy prices, lift the green levy for now. Net zero is something your generation feels very strongly about. Do you agree with that prescription, however?
Yes, I think that the green levy is something that it's really not the top of people's priority right now. I think that sort of making sure that people can survive on their cost of living is a priority. And, green energy, one of the things that we don't invest in is obviously something that's the elephant in the room when it comes to energy is nuclear. And the reason that that's not happening to the extent that it should be is because of sort of political reasons. It's quite taboo. Nuclear is actually, it's carbon free. It can be done safely.
Yeah, I love that political taboo. We talk about everything here. And Georgia, I'm delighted that you've been able to join us this morning to add to that. Thank you very much indeed for your comments on inflation, wages, and the basic laws of economics.